I will now call the meeting to order and we will call the roll. So online, we have the mayor of Asheville Norwood, Councillor Pat Wilford,
Present.
and the deputy mayor of Asheville Norwood, Laurie Bird.
Good morning.
Morning. Mayor of Cavan Monaghan.
Present.
The deputy mayor of Cavan Monaghan. Good morning. We have the mayor of Duro Dummer online, Heather Watson.
Good morning.
And the deputy mayor of Duro Dummer is also online, Harold Nelson.
Good morning.
Morning. We have the mayor of Havelock Belmont Methuen online, Jim Martin.
Present.
And the deputy mayor of Havelock Belmont Methuen, Hart Webb.
Good morning.
Good morning. The mayor of North Kawartha, Carolyn Amoyat.
Good morning.
And the deputy mayor of North Kawartha, Councillor Jim Whalen.
I'm just about online.
We have the mayor of Otonabee South Monaghan, Joe Taylor,
Here.
and our deputy mayor, Bonnie Clark, and the warden is absent. We have myself, the mayor of Selwyn, and the deputy mayor of Selwyn, Ron Black, is absent. The mayor of Trent Lakes, Councillor Lamb's Head, is online.
I am present.
You and the deputy mayor of Trent Lakes, Councillor Carolyn Armstrong.
Present.
Thank you. We'll now have our land acknowledgement.
With deep respect, we acknowledge the lands and interconnected waterways that bind us together, the foundation for all life. These lands serve as a keeper of history and stories and are a source of inspiration. In recognizing this, we embrace that all living things possess an important energy and purpose. We extend the utmost gratitude to the original peoples who have been caretakers of these lands and waters of this region from time immemorial, and to this day who continue this commitment. Peterborough County's dedication to reconciliation remains steadfast. In this spirit, we are committed to nurturing meaningful partnerships and connections that contribute to an environment of prosperity and well-being for all generations to come. This acknowledgement is made on the Treaty 20 land and the territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, and within the traditional lands of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations. Further, our gratitude is extended to the nations of Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island.
We will now have a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Our adoption of our agenda as circulated, can I have someone move that, please? Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Burt. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Does any councillor have a declaration of pecuniary interest in the agenda? And if so, can you please state it at the time that we have the discussion? We have our minutes before us of May the 20th, 2026. Can they be adopted as circulated? Moved by Councillor Webb, seconded by Councillor Lambshead. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Our first delegation this morning is Heather Whiteley, our project manager for Eastern Ontario Regional Network, and you're talking about the Cell Gap report. Morning.
You said not to touch the mic. Good morning. So yes, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here today. My name is Heather Wrightley. I am the project manager with EORN, the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. And we have been very busy. We are nearing the end of our Cell Gap project. So I'm here to provide an update as to where we're at. So I'll do just a couple of details, updates about EORN itself as an organization before moving into the Cell project update, and then touch briefly on the strategic plan. So EORN is very excited to be celebrating their 16th year in existence this year. And over those 16 years, we have been able to bring roughly $600 million of investment to Eastern Ontario through the initial broadband project, the investments that the ISPs provided after the broadband project, the Municipal Fiber Initiative, the Cell Gap project, and most recently, the very last premise broadband expansion project. With the EOWC investment, that's all of the municipalities in the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus with about 15 million. You're seeing about a 38% or 38 to 1 return on investment. EORN did have a branch called the EORN Consulting Services, ECS. We were created that division to do a for-profit consulting services. We were not utilizing that to the best of the ability, and it was becoming more of an expense to run. So in March of this year, the board agreed to cease operations of the consulting services and shift that work directly into EORN itself. There were changes in the Not-for-Profit Act as well at the same time that allowed us to do that. So we're now doing that under the one umbrella. So moving into the Cell Gap project. Just as a reminder, over $300 million investment into Eastern Ontario through the project before in-kind and community benefits. So we have had a couple of instances where our partner Rogers has sponsored things like the Winter Games or different things like that, which is additional benefits seen through the project. Governments of Ontario and Canada have each contributed roughly $71 million. The members of the EOWC and most members of the EOMC have contributed just over $10 million. And of course, our partner Rogers is bringing at least $150 million to the project. EORN continues to keep their administrative fees at a minimal amount, roughly about 6% of the total project. Thanks, Marissa. As a reminder of the goals for the project, they were pretty high. We were aiming to achieve across the demand area, which is where people live, work, and travel on major roadways, 99% voice coverage, 95% high definition, standard definition, and 85% high definition. So I'm pleased to say, if we can move to the next one, that we are well on our way to meeting or exceeding all of those targets. So again, 99, 95, and 85% targets. At the beginning of the project, you can see that we were well under those at 87, 81, and 74. As of December, we were exceeding both the SD and the HD goals, and those will continue to rise as we finish up. And in December, the voice demand coverage was just shy of that 99% with 98.6. And of course, we've got a little wiggle room. And at the end of the project, we should see that up to about 99.7%. Giving an update as to where we're at with the construction status. We are 100% done the archaeological assessments and natural history assessments through our partnerships and our consultation agreements with several First Nations. They had requested that we complete those assessments on all new build towers. Those have been completed successfully. We've also released 100% of sites from the LUA process to construction. So thank you again very much to your planning department and your councils who have helped us get those through and approved in a timely manner. 100% of our uplifts are complete across the project. Those were completed in late 2024. And I would like to say that, yes, as of May 19th, we were 88% of our colos complete and 80% of our new builds complete. We are now up to 84% of our new builds complete and 91% of our colocations. So that may not seem like much, but to me, it's very exciting. And every little percent gets us that little bit closer. So across the region, you can see all those little dots there represent towers that are being built or uplifted across the region. Construction will be completed by the end of August. And again, in addition to what you see on the screen there, we are now up to 217 new builds in service and 78, still 78 co-locations in service for a total of 93% complete overall, above the 90% mentioned there. What that means for Peterborough County, as of the middle of May, you had 56 new builds complete, 100% of your co-lifts and uplifts completed. However, I'm happy to say that we are now at 17 of the 25 new builds completed, which brings you up to a 68% and an overall 89% complete for the county. Moving back to a regional comparison, this is a visual of the HD representation. So you can see in 2021, before we started expanding towers, roughly 74.2% of the demand area was recognizing HD service. We are now projected to hit that 97.9. So you can see the lack of orange on the left and more orange on the right. Where you're still seeing white or gray on the right. A lot of those are provincial parks or areas where there was no demand, no major highways, no major communications routes, no travel or residences or buildings. In Peterborough County itself, you were trending at about 78% HD coverage at the beginning of the project. And again, you'll be up to about 96% HD at the end of the project. So again, you can see where that orange has colored in a significant number of those spaces. So for the remaining construction for Peterborough County, you've got those several sites up there. I'm pleased to say that we did have 3 more sites come into service off this list since the presentation was created. So South Dummer at Cottesloe, Jack Lake South, and Methuen Lake, which just went into service on Monday, are all done. So then you have 9 towers, I think, left in Peterborough County. And those will all be constructed and in service this summer. Any questions on the CellGAP before we touch on the strategic plan?
Any questions? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Sanis. Thanks, Heather, for the update thus far. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
So I noticed that the biggest private partner that you've got here is Rogers. And there are a number of cell service providers other than Rogers. Will all of these upgrades that you're referring to in the area covered only benefit Rogers customers?
So initially, yes, when we started this, we put out a request for bids, and we ended up having 2 submissions, one from Rogers and one from Bell. Through a procurement process, Rogers was selected as the proponent to partner with. So initially, yes, service will be available to Rogers clients as well as those of their flanker brands. So that is Fido and Chatter, I believe. So those will see the most benefit right away. Anybody that has roaming agreements with Rogers will also see service from those towers. And then, of course, the towers were constructed to facilitate partnership with other providers as well. So we support co-location of other providers on those towers, and we are encouraging the Bells, Teluses, Freedoms of the world to co-locate on there as well.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-up, if I can. So that would explain then, Heather, even though you've made significant progress throughout South and Eastern Ontario with coverage, that would explain why I haven't noticed any improvement as a Bell mobility customer. Okay.
Unfortunately, yes,
All
I'm
right,
sorry.
Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my comments are echoing Councillor Taylor's, because I'm like, I must spend an awful lot of time in that 4% that isn't covered, because I can't even get from like up to lane 15 without dropping it a few times. So hopefully, you know, the other providers jump on these towers sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Whalen.
Yeah, mine's the same as Joe's. We're not covered either, so I don't know. There's an awful lot of area that isn't in the 4%, but we have, condo units, there's, 25 condo units and everybody's on Bell because of the Bell cable that comes in. So, when could we ever expect that we could, do this with Bell, or do we all have to transfer over to Rogers?
That's a good question. Do you want to take that?
Morning.
Morning.
Should have known there'd be good questions like this. We always get into good technical questions. So as Heather had mentioned, the goal is to have co-location. Unfortunately, because Bell is a private entity, we can't force them into coming in if the business case doesn't make sense. They've done a great job in the landline and the cabling of that. So I expect that they will see over time a reason to come into these areas once those business cases make sense. So the infrastructure is built through this project. It's ready to go for the likelihood of a Bell or a Freedom or something like that. But it's really up to them to try to make their business case to do so. And to date, or as of right now, it's just not there for them. So.
Well, in our area, we still have people wandering around like this trying to get a signal if they're riding.
Yeah, the other one that as URN we've been advocating to the CRTC is for universal coverage, which is really to push the carriers to work better together to be able to, rather than building Bell towers and Rogers towers and Freedom towers, if spectrum is there, why not make the devices available to connect to it regardless of the carrier? Then on the back end through the aggregation, let them figure out how the billing works. Unfortunately, right now, though, of course, it's way more complicated than I'd ever think it should be. But we have brought that forward as a concern or an opportunity that we see through the investment that the province and the federal governments have made in Eastern Ontario. If they could really use this as a test bed to see how that universal coverage model might work. So we'll see if we get any traction there, but we are advocating heavily to try to get into that space as well.
And we do still have a number of towers to go into service. So more, actually, I believe there are quite a few in the North Kawartha area, Trent Lakes area that should help with that as well.
Well, I see you've got four North Kawartha. I know that they're going in different places, but they seem to have missed us, but anyway.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. You want to carry on the
Yes.
strat plan?
Thank you so much. So we'll touch on the strategic plan. So we continue to work on our 4-year strategic plan. We're about halfway through at this point. When we created this version of the strategic plan, we did update EORN's letters of patent to allow for greater versatility in the work that we are doing. So we are focused on 4 key areas: project management services, infrastructure project services, technology services support, and supporting municipalities as well. So as we consider existing and new projects, we continue to work closely with the Wardens Caucus and the Mayor's Caucus to ensure that the projects align with everyone's interests. Some of the few things that we have been working on, because the CELGAP wasn't keeping us quite busy enough, we've also done municipal services corporations business case studies for both Peterborough and Renfrew counties. We have been working with the Eastern Ontario IT Committee to review the original municipal fiber contracts and have those negotiated for renewal this year. We are actively advancing broadband expansion by working with the Ministry of Energy and Mines and local ISPs to expand the broadband project. We're currently partnered with 5 ISPs in the eastern area, the eastern part of the eastern region, to bring in approximately $24 million of broadband expansion investment there as well. That is on target to be completed this summer as well. And we are working on a proposal for the latest last mile challenge through the ministry as well to cover more areas. Some of those areas are actually here in Peterborough County, up near Apsley and Stony Lake area. And we continue to monitor and analyze decisions and consultations from the CRTC related to broadband and wireless deployment, and making submissions on everyone's behalf to make sure that the municipal voice is heard there as well. Moving into this year and next, we are focused on completing the CELGAP project. We are developing a detailed ROI in regards to the benefits of that project throughout the region as well. We will have final reports coming in from Rogers, as well as our final reports going to the province. We will be available to complete final update presentations to any member of the Wardens Caucus or Mayor's Caucus that would like to have us. We are developing plans for regional projects through the current funding model. We are investigating other sustainable funding opportunities. However, without any future opportunities, we will start to phase down our resources beginning in 2027. I believe that is everything for
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? I see none, so I'm looking for someone to move a motion to receive the report. Oh, sorry, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Chair Senes. I saw a few things on your list that touch on fiber, municipal contracts for fiber, et cetera. Could you just share a little bit more about what EORN's involvement is with fiber? I know that there are contracts established with Bell and others in different parts of the province, but I'm just wondering what your involvement with fiber is, and also continued frustration about how we cannot get a status report on the expansion and activation of fiber cable across our county.
Absolutely. I'll bring in Jason again for that.
No, and that's valid frustration. We hear that often when we come out to the councils. So our engagement in the fiber from the ASIP project is not directly involved. We are supporting municipalities. We are trying to work with the vendors as well as the telcos to understand where the status are. So if you have specific questions, we will try to get you an answer. Typically, the answers have been December 2025, and now it'll be December 2028. So we don't get a lot more than you do, besides what we're hearing if we talk directly to the vendors. The fiber that was mentioned in there is actually around the municipal fiber program. So 10 years ago, EORN helped secure some. In the old fiber worlds, it used to have tiered values depending where you were. So if you were in a small community, it was a tier 4, typically it was really expensive. We were able to negotiate on a bulk deal across Eastern Ontario to come up with a better rate. That contract's coming due in December of this year. So we're working proactively to see if we can either extend that or find alternatives that would be able to provide better return on investment from the investments that were made 10 years ago. So that's part of it. So we're sort of straddling the fence on the cell, the broadband, and then some of the ASIP without stepping over into the provincial mandates on the ASIP stuff. But if there are particular areas you'd like us to look into, we can try to support through that, and we'll advocate the best we can to try to get some dates.
I'm working my sources as best I can. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Stanis. So maybe for Jen or Sheridan, what's the financial contribution from the County of Peterborough to EORN in 2026?
Through you, nothing. We don't
Thank you.
fund EORN presently.
Great, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so I'm looking for a motion to receive the report. Councillor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Amiot. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And now Jason St. Pierre. You're going to be talking about the Eastern Ontario Regional Network Municipal Services Corporation Study Review.
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks for the invitation to come back to discuss this again and for the opportunity for me to refresh my memory on what this was. This was a study that EORN performed on behalf of Peterborough County, but also under funding through CMHC that we were awarded in 2024 on the values and impacts potentially of MSCs in municipal space, primarily with a focus on water and wastewater as it supported growth in housing across rural markets in Eastern Ontario. So I have gone through this. The original person who would have presented this was Kristen, and since she has since left our organization, so I'm doing the best that I can to fill in on this. If there's questions that I can't answer today, we will take them away though and try to get some answers. So just the next slide. So just the purpose and the context of what we're talking about here. As a reminder, 2025, the CMHC funded, we had funding from the CMHC that we were using to do a study to assess the MSC models for rural housing enablement. We did focus on the decentralized water and wastewater systems, primarily looking at Peterborough County, but a lot of the information and studies were based off existing MSCs that are throughout Ontario already. The Frontenac Municipal Service Corp is one of those groups that we work closely with on this study. We also worked with InService, which is out of the Innisfil area that does a full utility under their MSC, as well as Maple and a few others. Utilities Kingston was also part of that discussion. The goal was to identify a financially sustainable governance model that might be implemented to assist in the growth of housing and using MSCs as part of that. And the key constraint was the lack of servicing limits and housing growth in rural areas. So the challenges we have to service those rural lots with the density and the opportunities to make sure we're leveraging those lands efficiently and effectively. Maybe the next slide, please. Just, and again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you guys know all of this, but under the current system, water, wastewater is managed at the local municipal level. There are the 8 lower tier municipalities managing those current services. From the FIR data that we were able to pull, and again, this was almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago or so, there's about 46 kilometers of waterline mains and approximately 1.1 megaliters per year of treated water that flows through the county. On the drinking water, there's about 53 kilometers of pipes throughout the county, approximately 958 megaliters of water, which would be treated every year. And it's worth about $135 million. And that's a collective at the county level, if we take into account all of the lower tier as well. On the operating side, from the study and the data that we were able to pull at that time, there's about $4.4 million of wastewater costs that are associated with providing those services, with about $3 million of revenue. There's still a heavy reliance on the wells and septics in the rural areas. Again, preaching to the choir, you guys know all this very well. But the biggest implication we saw is that there is really a limited scale plus low density creates that weak cost recovery and high cost model for taxpayers. So there is that risk associated with that. Next slide, please. So just a reminder or a refresher, I guess, MSCs, they are all in the news today. And we have seen since even we created this study or did this work, there has been a renewed interest from the province on the MSC models, some of the benefits and perhaps some of the challenges that are going with that. But the MSC is a corporation that's enabled under the Municipal Act. It is a separate and legal entity delivering municipal services. It can own and operate water and wastewater assets or other utilities, which is the case that we studied. But there are other areas that are considering MSCs for housing. I've got one who's asked us to look at marine operations for them. So it's there is a fairly broad opportunity within that model for consideration. Under the MSC model, you can borrow and manage revenues independently. And most of the governance or the boards for these types of models are skill-based models of governance. The key requirement is that you have to operate commercially with external revenues to maintain independence of the municipalities. Under the core findings from the report, financial viability depends on the aggregated demand. So when we talk about smaller municipalities, rural areas, that is part of the challenge that needs to be considered. Scale, though, can be achieved. When we originally started talking about MSCs, there was a lot of talk about you can only create them within contiguous boundaries of each other. Those models seem to have been challenged, and we are now seeing organizations such as the Frontenac Municipal Service Corp work with peers outside of their direct boundaries. Groups like LAS have now started to work with multiple municipalities across Ontario. But really that multi-municipal partnership is what's going to be required to make these things sustainable in our review. At the single municipality, we did not see a sustainability model at this point that would make it viable or easy to establish and to maintain. And without the scale, you're going to end up with those higher per unit costs, greater exposure to system failure risks, which we have seen a few of in some of the member municipalities. Long-term instability, which of course nobody wants to see that, and the inability to replace those assets as obligated. Next slide. The benefits of the MSC under that model, though, under financial and operation, you are able to borrow. There is borrowing flexibility and potential off-the-book debt. Although I will highlight, since this report was written, that is being questioned is the debt levels and how you're able to transfer debt into an MSC. I am aware that LAS is working with a legal component right now to review that, to understand what that might look like. There is the ability to access new funding sources, whether it's through fees, bonds, partnerships. P3s is one that the province has touted quite loudly that they are interested in those models. And it spreads the capital costs across larger user bases. Under the governance, as mentioned, from our review, To be successful, and those MSCs that have been successful are skills-based boards. So depending on what the utility is being used for, or the MSC, whether it's engineering, finance, utilities, but expertise in the space that you're trying to create those, and an arm's length decision-making capability from the elected or the municipal bodies. On the delivery side, it does enable decentralized modular infrastructure. We are seeing some of that now being worked through in Frontenac as an example. It does facilitate the regional service integration and some cross subsidization, and it does support housing growth in low density areas if the models are set up properly. The financial benefits versus the risk. If we look at the benefits, you do have the potential to reduce impact on the municipal debt limits. Again, this is under legal review right now to fully understand what the impacts are on that. So might be a little bit premature on that statement. So take that with caution, please. There is a full recovery model though. It is a user pay versus plus reserves like any business, which can lead to challenges in smaller markets and less dense areas. And there's the ability to leverage grants, development charges. Although after some announcements this week, we don't know what that'll be, and partnerships in the P3 model where possible. Under the financial risk, startup costs are borne by the municipalities in the creation of the MSCs. It's difficult to get early stage funding for these because typically there is not a lot of credit or credit history that's available to the MSCs for consideration. Revenue instability in low density areas. So the startup costs are high and it does take time to get to a certain level of density where you are able to create enough revenue to offset the costs. Debt obligations still create some of those cash flow problems. And the risk of rate increases is insufficient. If there's insufficient funds, that is a risk that you may have to raise rates to a point where it's not manageable or affordable to residents. So next slide, please. Under the key risks and challenges. And again, scale risk, insufficient users is an unsustainable model. So if there's not enough capacity, there's not enough, even from a technology perspective, there are challenges if there's not enough user base to make them viable. Excuse me. Governance complexity. When we looked at this, that multi-municipal ownership and board alignment can be very challenging depending on the municipalities and the creation of that and how it is structured. But that multi-municipal ownership can be a challenging item to overcome. Timelines, these things don't happen quickly. It is, from what we've seen, it takes between 4 to 7 years to really establish an MSC that becomes functional to a point where you can leverage the benefits of it. There are regulatory burdens that should be taken into consideration. In this case, we are talking about the decentralized systems, but in general, there are legal and financial burdens that can also be taken into consideration with the regulatory pieces. In today's world, from funding, there is competition on every grant and possible funding opportunity. It is a very highly competitive landscape these days. There's a lot of focus on housing and the decentralization and growth in rural areas, as well as operational risks. So if a system fails, which again, we've seen that, it does lead to a certain level of risk if there's not enough funding available, but also asset life cycle costs. We know units can only last so long and then investment is required. And residual municipal liability may still exist if it's not structured or if it's not structured correctly. So if we look at Peterborough County, and this was a discussion that we brought forward about a year ago now when we presented to this group, really there's 4 alternatives that we saw through the study that we did. First is a county-led MSC. Sorry, the next slide. It's just which based on scale, geographical size, skill sets, knowledge, experience, that is being identified as a potential, as a preferred because of the scale. Multi-municipal MSCs, so a shared ownership model, although it does come with the challenges that I've identified, is another alternative that could be considered if looking for partners. We did look at the single municipal MSC at this point, based on financial viability, as well as technical and scalability. It's not a recommended suggestion, but always interested to look at it more. And a joint service board is an alternative suggestion that was brought forward. Not highly recommended at this point, but it is an alternative that could be considered. If you want the best outcome, though, based on the study and the data that we've been able to pull and looking at Peterborough County as a whole, It really is to have a multi-municipality or county model with full buy-in from all participants in that model. And that's where we're seeing in Frontenac County, where they were able to, now again, it's only 4 municipalities, so it's a little bit less complex, but they were able to pull together all of those in a single direction to be able to create that group. And then the other one is also under that is the demand aggregation and the risk sharing that takes place with that as well. So since we did the study in 2025, there has already been some policy change within the province, which again, I'm sure you're well aware of, but the province has increasingly promoted regionalization and consolidation of water and wastewater services. So this is more of a focus on the water wastewater piece than the MSC themselves, although they recognize the MSC as a vessel that allows them to be able, or municipalities or private sector to be able to consider placing these items into a municipal service corp to be able to manage them. Under the 2026 policy direction, which is still in flight and still looking for comment, I think until August this year, strong oversight of municipal utilities, encouragement of entity-based models, so the MSC, the utility style. The province is really focused on this, or has been from the information that's being shared, with a focus on full cost recovery, asset management compliance, and resilience and climate adaptation. We're seeing a shift towards larger financial sustainable water entities to be created based on those discussions. Well, from the study we have and the study we've done for the county before, it does align with the MSC concept that we've shared with you, but it may increase slightly the urgency of a scalable government model. And finally, just on the corporation model and the direction of the province, they are encouraging municipalities to explore the water and wastewater municipal service corporations and related public utility corporation models. In April this year, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing released the DRO posting, inviting municipalities to express interest in implementing a water and wastewater public corporation model. Going through it actually again this week to refresh myself on what was happening there. There are a number of really good questions in there that should be taken into consideration if you are looking to go into this model. They're pretty accurate, so based even on the study that we've done. Initial implementation has focused in the Peel region involving Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon. So right now there's a lot of focus on those large entities to see how that will work. The consultation closes on August 13th, 2026. And although I didn't include the link in here, maybe that'll link. I do have it if you would like it. So just on the conclusions, MSC is a viable, but it is a long-term solution. This is not something that's going to happen quickly, and you're not going to see that return quickly. It is a long-term solution, especially with a rural servicing focus. If we don't have the scalability for it, it's not going to be sustainable. That is something that really does come through the study and through the numbers, is that we really require a certain scale in order for it to be sustainable. From our study, the best path forward we see is a county-wide or municipal multi-municipal MSC. Again, being aware of the challenges that come with some of those as well, and a phased implementation. So start with the municipal level and transition into the MSC. So for critical success factors from what we saw and what we've seen in our studies across the we interviewed many municipalities as well. The strong municipal collaboration is required. You need to have that united front to be able to decide this is a direction you want to go in. Financial modeling and business case refinement is required to ensure that all of the data is available and that you have, again, a full view of the risks and potential issues, but also the benefits. Early funding alignment, you will need to create something, some sort of fund to be able to create a model like this. And more important, probably the biggest one is governance clarity. If you don't have strong governance and strong clarity going into it, it will be very difficult to have a successful creation of an MSC. The bottom line is they can unlock the MSC, or the proper establishment of an MSC, especially when focused on water and wastewater, can unlock housing growth, but it does require scale planning and shared risk.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we're being asked to receive this report. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Graham.
Through you, Chair.
Yeah, I appreciate the report. I completely, almost foundationally disagree with the finding, but that's just my perspective. But, you know, we've been looking into the municipal service corp as a township for over a year and a half now. And I think there's really only viability at, within a single tier or lower tier township for this model. But like you said, with the legal questioning of the debt capacity, the debt restructuring is really the only benefit of the MSC that I see at this point. When you talk about scalability, the reality on the ground, and I was surprised to learn that local lower tier municipalities with servicing capacity were consulted at all throughout the process of the study, which kind of means it exists in a bit of a vacuum. But I can appreciate the academic exercise. But I guess the issue I have is when you talk about scalability, when you look at the settlement areas throughout the county now, there aren't any within close proximity that could benefit from a shared system. So to me, the premise where it kind of gets off track in my regard is the fact that the lack of servicing is holding back housing establishment. I think that I understand the starting there, but the actual truth, in my perspective on the ground, having worked with everyone in all those municipalities, is that there's a lack of planning to actually facilitate, or a lack of conviction in several municipalities to support significant housing whatsoever. So in the absence of a plan to where we're trying to go, the solution of servicing capacity is really how you would pursue plans on the ground. Where I run into significant concerns about an MSC, especially at a wide regional basis, is you're theoretically creating an entity where any municipality with their own servicing forgoes any controls to facilitate the servicing that they require for their own purposes. That's a real problem, because you're now competing with 8 other municipalities at various levels of service capacity or none. There are only 4 that have any capacity right now. There are 4 that do not have any whatsoever. And I don't think from the conversations we've had, and we're still waiting for the OP from the province for however many years it is now, but the MSC doesn't create capacity on its own. It requires plans to go into it to facilitate and potentially financially leverage assets to establish capacity, but it still costs money. There's no financial benefits that you outlined that aren't already available to municipalities that are taking advantage of. There's never been more provincial money available for water wastewater services through grants. There's never been. I think we've received over $20 million as a municipality this year alone. Like that is, and that doesn't factor in, you're eligible for those grants, but we also have some long-term debt that's non-transferable in the form of IO debentures. And IO debentures are available to any municipality who wants them, and they're foundational. Now, when interest rates are low, they're not as advantageous. And when interest rates fluctuate like we've seen over the last decade, you can bind yourself into a rate that can be punitive one year and beneficial the next, which is complicated and frustrating. But so I really just don't see any avenue where a countywide system, without totally upending the planning process to create these sort of near boundary settlement areas to achieve that scalability that you're talking about. Because if scalability is foundational, you're not going to be able to achieve it under the current standard. I think Havelock and Norwood would be the closest 2 settlement areas. There's 10 kilometers between them. It's on a county road. It's, you know, on Highway 7, which we don't have, which we all know anyone who's had to plan around it is a nightmare. You also have environmental sensitivities, topography issues, and the shield that you're having to accommodate in a lot of these northern areas that haven't accumulated growth in systems. These are huge barriers that to me just become more precarious when you have 8 mouths to feed and 8 different tiers of, you know, requirements to meet. And there's no circumstance where I would ever consider selling the $80+ million of assets that we've accumulated as a municipality. And there's a far less chance I would ever consider handing them over with the reins of controlling our ability to manifest the plans that we make as a municipality at the lower tier. That's just my perspective. Having, like, we've been looking at an MSC because of the benefit. The only benefit to me is the debt alleviation, but we don't have a debt issue at the municipality, so it's not an issue. Our system is user pay, and we're 87% asset replacement cut. So we don't have those barriers, but they could exist other places. But until the county and all of its municipalities get to a consensus where we're going to allocate responsibilities for manifesting growth a bit more evenly, because now you have upwards of almost 80, if not 70+% going to 2 municipalities now. So we're not even really attempting to create that problem in certain municipalities, and there's certainly not plans to manifest more rural housing in the municipalities where there aren't plans. So to me, whereas, maybe 50 years down the road, when each of us have our own capacity issues, and there may be a harmonization where we could benefit from, I think, a more operational benefits, because I know the cost of staffing for some of these facilities is very expensive. You can outsource to the private sector. That's an option too. And we've considered that at different times. But I just think right now they're so separated in so many isolated areas where what you're really talking about is servicing, you're talking about urban facilitation of urban growth. And that's where you're seeing, and because that's where you get the scale, you get the density. You're not going to create scale across the wide, farmland that we have now. And I don't think there's any appetite for it. So like, to me, that's it. I think the problem isn't a lack of servicing. The problem is there isn't a consensus across the county about facilitating significant housing growth. And if each municipality has its autonomy to do that, that's the case. But it's not necessarily a lack of servicing that's the foundational problem. If you're not planning for things that are going to need servicing, even you're not even at the foundation where that's the riddle that we're really trying to solve. But if that's the premise that we're proceeding on, then that's the outcome you're going to come to. So that's just a bit of my feedback from our experience and our exploration, but we're all kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with that legal debt implications, because for us, we're pursuing a second system and we've just created an additional reservoir. So we're proceeding and facilitating more growth than almost the rest of the entire county combined. And we don't have those financial pitfalls but we might be able to benefit from some debt restructuring, but there's no benefit for us to be a part of a larger system that's further behind without capacity, because then our users would just be subsidizing the creation of infrastructure elsewhere and not receiving the benefit of it backwards, or at least having to wait in line for the actual infrastructure that we need, which you're going to be competing over. And so foregoing the control to an entity, there are so many pitfalls. And I thought AMO did a similar sort of review of MSCs from water wastewater. And the pitfalls of privatization are significant. You lose the ability to control rates. It becomes a more of a profit generating system, depending on the governance structure, obviously, but it's perilous and it's concerning. And I think there may be a time 50 years down the road where the county could benefit from this, but until municipalities have that consensus that we need to pursue rural housing growth at a scale, I just don't think it has any merit.
Thank you. And that's part of the reason we're just being asked to receive this. So I don't know if there's any other questions or comments with regards to this report. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I recognize we're just looking to receive this, and I'm prepared to make the motion at the appropriate time. But I just want to add to the conversation or remind the colleagues here at the table that, to Councillor Graham's point, there are 4 municipalities that don't have any water wastewater, including Douro-Dummer Township. And this type, an MSC model, could allow for modular units as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean development within the urban areas where there are shared boundaries. Having an MSC could allow having those modular units that we've received presentations on before, and having smaller localized development, yet the monitoring and oversight of that system could be done through the MSC, and that could potentially help the lower tiers without water wastewater access those resources through that shared agreement. So I just wanted to reference that. I believe that was what was noted in the presentation, and it's broader than just having existing municipal services like Cavan Monaghan does, and Selwyn and SNL Norwood and Havelock Belmont. There's 4 of us who are at this table that potentially could also benefit from those smaller contained modular units, and just to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And you did say you were prepared to move the recommendation?
I am, yes.
Oh, we have Councillor Whalen before we do that. Go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for my computer not working and speaking over people who are talking, especially you, Jason. Sorry about that. you know, the cost, the financial risks on this thing are pretty high. I live in a condo corporation, where, we have our own water and sewer, and, our costs this year went up $300 a month. So we're now $900 a month. It costs us, $150,000 a year to monitor the water and sewer. And that's not including parts or anything that might go wrong. That's what the government has put in as regulations to we have to do, and the people, we can't use a grade 1 engineer or 2 or 3, we ought to have a grade 4 engineer. And the cost of these things are just going sky high because it's the water you're telling people they can drink, and it's the sewage you're saying is going to be clear enough to come out the other end. And I really appreciate this, Jason, because it really brings into focus, if you don't have enough people, the cost of this thing, because there are initial costs, but there also is ongoing costs, as we say. And I don't think it's really, we were so excited about this when we first heard about it, that, you know, we were gonna do wonders with it, but if you don't have, we've got 25 people, 25 units, and we can't afford what we got. You know, we're driving a Cadillac and we only have Chevy wages.
Thank you. All right, back to Councillor Watson is moving the recommendation to receive. Can I have someone second it, please? I'm looking at Councillor Whalen. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We're moving on to consent items. I do have one item's been pulled, 8C. Is there anything else that anyone wants pulled from the consent? Seeing none, can I have someone move the balance of the consent that we are not? Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Amiot. All in favor? It's carried. 8C, that was pulled by Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chair Sanis. And Brian, I'd like you to take a message, if you would, please, back to Jenna, thanking her for this very thorough report. I'm telling you, this could be the thesis for a PhD student. It is impressive. I also would like to send the message that perhaps, and I made the motion, perhaps it wasn't clear enough. She devoted, unfortunately, a large amount of energy and time towards spraying of noxious weeds. That was never a concern of mine. And I don't think it was concern from many around the council table. The county does a good job of managing that now, and I wouldn't want to see that stop. So noxious weeds are not an issue. Spraying of Phragmites, I still stand by the statement that we should not be spraying herbicides into environmental protected areas. Environmental protection by its very name deserves protection, and I'm satisfied with the county's explanation of the program and how you administer it. I just hope that county staff uses discretion about where they spray, because there's lots of pockets of Phragmites that do not exist in environmentally protected areas. And in fact, if not now, right, sure, they'll be standing on dry land. So that's just my comments. I certainly appreciate the report. I appreciate the explanation. I'm satisfied with the current practice. I just hope that the county uses discretion about exactly where they apply it.
And would you like to move that report?
I don't know if Brian wishes to respond. There's no response required, but.
Through the chair, absolutely. Just a brief comment. So appreciate comments on the report. I agree. It was a very well written report. I did ask for the expansion of that information because there was some confusion amongst the public and others about the difference between the noxious weed program under the Weed Control Act and the volunteer program that is, that we're performing right now for Phragmites, the invasive Phragmites. So I think it was important to distinguish between those two programs, help everybody understand why we're doing what, where we are, and that we are following provincial best practices to implement all of those programs within the county in support of the townships as well. So I appreciate your comments for sure. We'll definitely take that back.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have a question, Councillor Huntley? Go ahead.
Through you, Chair, I do want to echo Councillor Taylor's comments on that report as well. It was a great report to read and very thorough. Massive understanding of how things are going on. My only statement to it at this point is I don't know how much of the public actually really reads council reports. I'm wondering if there would be an easy way to kind of translate that into like an information page that we can make more public, because it's fantastic. I mean, like as Councillor Taylor said, I mean, it's the start of a PhD paper, and making that publicly available more than just a council report, I think would be very beneficial, considering the height of this topic.
Sheridan.
Through you, I just will share that our communications team has been working with operations and has been actually doing a social media campaign and knowledge around noxious weeds and Phragmites over this season and last season. So, I think Brian can speak to the fact that last year, our number one call that we received through operations was about noxious weeds. So we do a lot on the communication perspective of identifying treatment for weeds to the public.
Thank you. All right, so Councillor Watson was moving this recommendation. Councillor Graham has seconded it. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to staff reports, and we have Doug Sakosha, who's going to be talking about road rationalization for the Township of Selwyn. And we do have Adam Tobin here, who's our Manager of Public Works from Selwyn Township. Welcome.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. And before I start, actually, I want to do the same. I do want to really highlight and note to council all the collaboration, hard work from Selwyn staff. It's been a very collaborative process, and so I really want to acknowledge all of staff. And as the chair said, Adam Tobin is here should any township questions arise at the end in relation to this report. So as background information, county staff did apply the council-approved policy for roads rationalization process for 3 road sections. And so that's County Road 12, the west end, which would be locally known as the Loop. We have Lily Lake Road from County Road 27 westerly to Highway 7. And the third section we looked at was 2 different road names, but it's essentially one road section, being Fairburn Street and Third Line from the City of Peterborough limit to County Road 18 or Shamong Road. And so as part of the council approved 2022 Transportation Master Plan update, these road sections were actually identified as candidate road sections for transfer. And that's the reason why staff started with these road sections. But just noting to council that there is probably more to come in the future year as we go through additional road sections. So it's just the start of many. In the essence of time today, I'm not going to go through the technical evaluations, but they are noted in Appendix A. So that's all the technical criteria from the policy that we applied. But just generally, I just want to summarize that the 3 road sections before council today did meet the approved process for being a candidate for a transfer. So that's why they're in front of council today. Those final evaluation reports were issued to the Township of Selwyn, and they were actually formally recognized through council at the lower level on November 27th. And actually that resolution directed staff to continue to work with county staff to develop conditions and really where we are today in front of county council. So as part of developing those conditions, county staff actually completed a cost estimate. So I do want to note that was done in-house. So we were able to agree on using county staff to complete that and save some consulting services costs by doing it in-house. Really what we were looking at is the condition of those roads to date. So we put a value to those. We then looked at a cost estimate to upgrade those roads to the transferees, basically condition or requirements. And then it's the net compensation value. So we netted out the difference, and that's what's before council today. In general, there's an overall net compensation for the 3 road sections to be transferred of approximately $620,000 to be transferred from Township of Selwyn to the County of Peterborough, subject to council approval, obviously. One thing to note is the Township of Selwyn is proposing to phase that over a 7-year installment plan, essentially just to ease that ability to pay that value. Also, though, I do want to know from a county staff perspective, we looked at that, and that generally actually aligns with the timing we would need those funds for the upgrade on those road sections. So in general, county staff are agreeing to the timeline of payment over the 7 years. Also want to note, actually, since the submission of my report, Township of Selwyn Council actually did make a resolution on a similar report. And so they have agreed through resolution to accept staff's findings and continue with next steps, which are drafting conditions of this for transfer. And that was completed on May 26th at the Township of Selwyn. If approved today, I want to note that the next steps do include legal and surveying costs. This broken down to about $14,000 to the county and about $11,000 to the Township of Selwyn, but that would not impact the county's operating budget for 2026. There is sufficient funds there to cover those costs. So no impact to budget to continue with the next steps. And just lastly, you want to note one thing key on this. If approved by council, staff are recommending the transfer actually occur on July 1st next year, so 2027. The rationale there is it's going to take many months to do the survey and the legal. And what we didn't want to see was the transfer in the middle of winter. We recognize that could be an operational constraint for the changeover. And so we're recommending July 1st of next year in discussions with the operations team to really allow for a smooth transition of the road transfer. So with that, the recommendations before council.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention that all of these recommendations make a lot of sense. For example, down on Maryland Drive and Fifes Bay Road, we have a snowplow that comes down from the township and one that comes down from the county. It's crazy. It should all be done by the same snowplow guy. And County Road 19 is at the, I don't know if that's the south end or what is that, northeast, west, I don't know.
East.
West. Okay.
East leg of the-
At Shamong Road, it changes to Township Road, county, our third line. So it only makes sense to continue it on as a county road. Fairburn again too, there's a small stretch that belongs to the township, the county should just take it on. But I did give a warning when we did approve this that you don't let the city get near any of those roads because they're awfully close to the city limits there. And I don't want them taking it over. You've got to promise to keep them. Anyway, questions? Comments? Councillor Graham.
Through you, Chair. Doug, I just wanted to thank you for the report. I've been a big proponent of the rationalization policy, big advocate for it, so I hope we keep them coming. But and congratulations and thanks to the Township of Selwyn for the practicality of it all. I think there's more opportunities that exist like this throughout the county, and I applaud the work and keep them coming. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whalen.
Was that a motion?
I'd be happy.
All right, moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Whalen.
Directed the staff, be directed, staff. And the staff be directed.
Seconded by Councillor Whalen, all in favor. That's carried. All right, now, yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to the previous item. I had tried to interrupt, but didn't want to, we had already started. It was just an error called in the vote. It was actually Joe Taylor that moved that consent item and Matthew Graham seconded and it was carried. I'm just removing Heather Watson because she didn't.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. That's why you're here. All right, we'll move on to Woodland Drive.
Thank you again and through your chair. The report before council today is in relation to County Road 24 at Woodland Drive. And so just some quick background information. County Road 24 is a rural collector road, carries about 2,400 cars a day, has a speed limit, of about 60 kilometers an hour in the vicinity of this intersection. The intersection currently is a two-way stop control, with the stop control being on Woodland, which we would consider the minor road. Also noting, and council may recall that this was subject to a previous road safety audit in 2013, so quite a while ago. And from that, actually, we did implement some safety features along there, some painted rumble strips, an overhead flashing beacon, oversized signage, and then stop signs actually located on both sides of the road back then. So those were implemented to improve some conditions, but through that, we were continuing to monitor it for additional upgrades, always stop control and traffic signals, which is why we're here in front of council today. Also noting that staff did receive some additional service requests in relation to safety of this intersection. Specifically, it was in relation to the treatment of the perception of staff on vehicles on County Road 24 treating it as an always stop. So they were actually coming to a stop even though they were not required to. And there was some video footage provided to staff through that service request. So we did implement through a typical process, a safety review of this following Ontario Traffic Manual Book 5. And specifically that just lays out the warrant criteria to implement an always stop control. And so really what you can implement an always stop control warrant based upon is visibility assessment. You can look at the collision history as well as the traffic volumes themselves should warrant that. And in general, it should be close to a 60-40, 70-30 split. You don't want a high volume on one road and not the other. So you want to be generally equal volumes on those 4 legs of intersection. So details of that analysis are included in the report. Again, we'll go through them all before you today, but essentially do want to highlight that this is now warranted based upon the traffic volume alone. So what we've seen, we looked at the traffic volumes over the past decade, and we are seeing actually quite an increase on Woodland Drive. So not as much of an increase on Counter 24. It's actually more on the side street Woodland Drive with some of the growth that we're seeing in the area that's really driving traffic volume significantly up on that east-west road. And that's really now what's saying has met the condition of an always stop control at this location. Last part I just want to note is we are recommending with any change like this, it's a substantial change for motorists that would be normally going north-south. They get used to going straight through. We are recommending the creation of a communication strategy to really get out ahead of the public, advising them of the change, subject council approval today, of that change so they're aware of it when it does occur. So that would be one condition we would also implement as part of this project. So with that, the resolution is also before council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? If not, I'm looking for someone to move it. Councillor Burt, seconded by Councillor Lambshead, all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. All right, next we have Sheridan Graham, who's going to talk about the Provincial Federal Development Charge Program.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. As council is aware, the provincial and federal governments made an announcement this past Monday, June 1st, with respect to the new Provincial Federal Development Charge Reduction Program. And staff wanted to take the opportunity to discuss potential future direction from council on this. Unfortunately, the province has implemented a very short timeframe in terms of applications for this, which is June the 19th, which is before our next regularly scheduled meeting. So staff did do some background information and provided that in the report as well, some financial analysis and DC transportation and growth related project studies included in the report for your consideration. It's our recommendation that if you would like to further discuss this, that there would be a special meeting called. We had initially suggested June 10th, but there are a waste management committee meeting, a finance committee meeting, and an ECTEP committee meeting all on that day. So we're suggesting that it be June 11th instead, which doesn't conflict with any township council meetings. But more, this report is for council to discuss and provide direction to staff. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I actually watched that announcement and I found that the province was high on rhetoric and low on direction as to really what they want to do. So, or detail rather. Anyway, Councillor Graham. Oh, is Councillor Taylor first?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sheridan. I got to tell you, when I read the report and listened to the announcement and tried to understand the implications, I'm really underwhelmed by this whole program. And I don't think we need to call a special meeting. We have a bit of time now. We can discuss it. But it's my position that we not opt into this thing. We know what the DC revenue is going to bring us as it currently stands. We don't know what type of revenue this program would give us if we cancel some of those DC revenues. So I'm not, to me, this thing does not appeal to me. And I would suggest we not opt into it.
Thank you. Councillor Graham? Oh, sorry.
Thank you for that comment. When staff did a detailed analysis of the guidelines that were released, there is some ambiguity in the wording, and our interpretation is that we could consider an application and not make a change until the transfer payment agreement is executed. So that therein would lie the opportunity to not do it if you didn't get funding. And that's our interpretation of what they've put forward in the wording.
Councillor Graham?
Just wanted to repeat that.
Oh, can you repeat it again, please?
Sure. So in the guidelines, there's multiple sections within the guidelines released, but within it, our interpretation is that it says that we have to execute and implement into place a reduction of DCs on execution of the transfer payment agreement. So if we made application and were denied, it's our interpretation that we wouldn't then have to move forward with a DC reduction if they turn us down.
Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, been doing a lot of the ambiguous reading as well over the few weeks that this has been percolating, and then the announcement leaves a lot to be desired and understood. It's very clear that there are some bad faith actors that the province is targeting with this legislation, and no surprise, they're large urban centers, but the implications are for all of us, which is unfortunate. But at the November meeting, when we held pat on our development charges, it's equivalent to a 4.2% reduction already. So we're already playing ball in the sandbox where we're supposed to. But, you know, when I was looking at the math from an 8.8 billion sounds like a lot of money over 10 years, but per year it becomes 880 million. And then when you add it over 3 years, which is the proposed reduction, it's 2.6 billion. So when we saw the numbers from Jennifer that were forecast to have 62 million, well, when you apply the 62 million to the 2.6 billion, that would be about 2% of the total monies available in the first 3 years. We are 0.04% of the provincial population. So to me, the math doesn't work out. The odds of us subjugating ourselves to potential approvals for monies that would automatically be accrued to the tune of a disproportionality of population allocation is just unlikely. But we've always heard we'll be made whole, but this leaves a lot to be desired and a lot to be concerned about. But I think we should also rest on our laurels that we've already held pat and are a far cry. But you know, I take a lot of issues with the conversation about the development charge reduction program and the merits of it. There is no correlation between development charges and costs of housing. If you look at Clarington, and I've done the math, you look at a few municipalities or urban areas around us, they have almost double the total DC charges, and the cost of those housing are about 20,000, maybe 50,000 more, depending on all the nuances and complications. At the end of the day, the market's going to charge what the market can bear. And the reduction in DCs, until there's some sort of stipulation where even things like land valuation, right? When you're building subdivisions on land that costs a fraction of what they did in urban areas, there's no correlation to reduced price. You're still paying $750, $850 plus for a single detached. Like, so until the government comes up with a mechanism by which we can actually facilitate and have some sort of controls on what the actual purchase price is, I don't think any of these things are going to have the desired effect. And I understand the belief that certain municipalities and larger urban areas, they have costs so outrageous from an infrastructure standpoint that we couldn't even understand. We haven't had enough time with the infrastructure and bridges that we have. So we don't have the problem of frivolous reserves of DC monies. We're spending it as we get it and as we need it. And I know from a municipal standpoint, we're actually utilizing internal loans to offset deficits in DC revenue. So this is a really scary factor when you're thinking that now our money might have to be paid back over a longer period. It's really disruptive. But as it's been talked about, and I know that there's lots of conversations with different levels of the ministerial department, this really isn't intended for Peterborough County and the size and scope that we are. Now, would they love the tokenism gesture for us to virtue signal and be a part of this? That's maybe there's merits in that, but I think the 4.2% is a good start. And I don't think we're going to have any clarity between now and June 10th about what the rural implications or rural stream or structure is going to be. So if there is clarity provided, I think you might be calling a special meeting throughout the summer months. Because of the ambiguity and because of the lack of clarity, I think we're not going to be the only ones asking for it. But I fully support the potential for a special meeting. I just don't think the 11th is going to be necessarily the timeline that jives with getting the information we're looking for.
Sheridan.
Through you, I agree with a lot of the sentiments that you've expressed. One of the things that the legislation or the guidelines are very absent discussing are the reserves that some of these large urban centers have for DCs. It doesn't even touch on those. And with respect to the rural component, we have been advised by the province that there will be a rural component that will be released. Initially, we were told it would be for rural and northern. Now I'm hearing that it may only be for rural that don't have DCs, but it's all up in the air. And my understanding is that won't be released within the next month. So again, to Councillor Graham's point, we won't have answers on that. I did say in the report that I think this is one of those long-term pain for a short-term gain. And that we are very responsible with our DCs now, and we are supportive of council's direction in this regard, whichever you choose.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Watson. Sheridan, in the report, you do reference that although this DC program that's being initiated by the province and the feds is primarily towards infrastructure and housing. Right now, our DC charges also fund paramedic services, long-term care studies, waste and health unit, and we would lose that revenue. I'm not prepared to do that.
Councillor Graham.
And one of the other points of clarity, just through you, Chair, that really kind of, to me, really felt a bit concerning was the insinuation that we can propose what or the number of housing that units that are going to be facilitated because of this reduction. We have a queue of development for 5 to 10 years that's already being pursued, regardless of the development charges. But this legislation isn't going to change any of that. So I don't even know. I don't know. I haven't seen any further clarity as to why, but this kind of smells to me like that, considering long-term care beds as housing units. Like, wait a second, like the development there's a long history and there's a long, process to get through these developments. So the queue is the queue. And I don't think there's going to be any units that are new to the queue because of a reduction in development charges.
Through you, I agree with you.
All right, so are we just receiving this report then? We're not going to pursue. All right, can I have someone move that? Councillor Hart, seconded by Councillor Huntley, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, are there any announcements? Councillor Graham.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to announce that despite the COVID disruption, we are celebrating the 175th annual Millbrook Fair next weekend from the 11th to the 14th. We encourage everyone who wants to come out for some fun in the sun to join us. The weather's supposed to be great. And I know there's a few specific and special events that we're working on to really celebrate the 175th, which is quite an achievement. And I want to thank all the volunteers at the Fair Board for always stepping up and providing this event for the community. They do a great job. And it is a thankless job a lot of the times because lots of people have lots to say about rural fairs, but they do their best and we appreciate their work for it.
Thank you. Councillor Burt.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Millbrook Fair is always a kickoff to summer. You guys start it and we end it, so it's a great thing. I just wanted to announce June 4th to 6th, our local high school, NDHS, is hosting the OFSA Girls A Soccer Championship. There's over 20 teams coming from across the province. And again, thank you to the organizing committee and the high school for getting that to our community. And games will be held at the high school as well as at the Hastings Fieldhouse. So good luck to all those teams.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll now go to the clerk for the bylaws.
Okay, we have one bylaw on the agenda today, 2026-20, and that is for the all-way stop at Woodland Drive.
Right, I have someone move that. Councillor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. And confirming bylaw. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Martin. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. Notice to adjourn. Councillor Wolford, seconded by Councillor Lambshead. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. Have a great afternoon.